guys, and welcome back to another book review. So today's book review, I have a lot of feelings about this book. This book was a letdown for me in a way. We'll get into that though. We'll get into that. So this is Mr. Sticks by Jeffrey Hale. Now, I have never heard of Jeffrey Hale. I had never heard of this book. Apparently it came out this year in April, so it's very new. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. I haven't seen any YouTube videos. I did search the name. I looked it up. I looked it up on Goodreads. There are no reviews on it, so I went into the dark with this one, which is fine. That's usually how you find a lot of gems. This one just disappointed me, and I feel really, really bad. I don't like giving books a negative review because books are very subjective. Sometimes one little thing can make you hate a book, whereas that little thing makes someone else love it. So I don't want to say I hate this book. I was just a little disappointed by it. If it had been a little bit different, I think I would have had a different opinion on it. But that being said, I don't know who Jeffrey Hale is. I don't know anything about this book except from what the book is actually about. I don't know anyone's thoughts about it. I don't know anything about that. But I do like the cover. It's that nice matte cover, which I like. And I think the corn looks cool. It doesn't look that scary, honestly, which kind of resonates with the book. I know it says a thriller, but it kind of sounds like a horror book to me, which when we read the plot, we'll get into. But again, I didn't find this book very scary. I'll get more into that though. So the back of the book is very, very short. It doesn't give you a lot, which kind of sounds like Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach, but that book is so good. But anyways, this says, the dark net is filled with monsters. It's frequented by thieves, drug dealers, child predators, and cold-blooded killers. But Mr. Sticks is the most fearsome of them all. Mr. Sticks uses the dark net to locate the lost and vulnerable, to lure young men and women into his web, and once he has a fly in his web, he doesn't let go. Nobody knows what happens to Mr. Sticks' victims after the dance is done, but Lucia, an office administrator from Eaton, Colorado, is determined to find out before her 16-year-old sister becomes another notch on Mr. Sticks' belt. Now, I thought this book was going to be about the dark net, which I am very fascinated by the dark net, the dark web, whatever you call it. I think there's so many names for it, but I'm very fascinated by it, and I think a lot of people are because it's illegal and it has very fascinating things on it, like cannibals and drugs and stuff like that. It's very fascinating, and I think people like things that you can't get access to easily. But apparently it's very easily accessible. I know many people have gone onto the dark web, and it scares me. I don't want to go on it. I just like hearing people talk about it. So I went into this with the expectation that there was going to be a lot about the dark net, the dark web. I thought it was going to be a main focus, and it's just really not. But again, let me give you a synopsis of this book. What I'm about to say happens within the first 40 pages of the book, so I'm not spoiling anything major for you guys, I promise. There is a ton of stuff that I'm not going to cover. This is just the first 40 pages of the book. So, the book starts out with a girl named Finley. She's 16, and she's in front of a cornfield. And she ends up doing this ritual where she cuts open her hand, and then she spins in a circle 3 times or something like that. And then she walks into the cornfield. And when she walks into the cornfield, she is there at night, and she sees a figure, and then she disappears. And then the next chapter is Lucia, who is Finley's older sister. She's coming back to Eaton, Colorado because she's worried about her sister Finley. She hasn't heard from her in 48 hours, and they usually text and call and stuff like that very frequent. And since she hasn't heard from him, she's very, very worried about her. So she drives back to her hometown in search of Finley. She's going to try to find her and figure out what's going on. When she goes to see her parents to ask where Finley is, her mom's an alcoholic, her dad's something else, and they just don't care. She's like, where's Finley? Where is she? Do you know where she is? Where has she been? When have you last seen her? And they're just not concerned. Finley's a problem child and she has a reputation of running away, so they just assume that she's run away and she'll come back eventually when she wants to. And Lucia's very upset by her parents' blasé attitude. She's mad. She wants to find her sister. She's worried about her sister and no one's taking her seriously. So she tries going to the police and the police just don't care. She tells them who her sister is. She tells them that she's been missing for 48 hours and she would like to file a missing persons report. And they straight up look her in the face and say, we know who your sister is. We know who your mom is. No, we're not going to do that. That's dumb. Your sister is notorious for running away. She's a problem child. She'll come back. You're over exaggerating. And Lucia gets mad because, which I understand, this happens a lot in real life. If you watch a lot of missing persons cases, they label teens as runaways, and if they're problem children or young adults and they've been notorious for running away, they don't care. They just don't care. They assume that it's not a big deal. And I just don't understand, because even if they have run away, I still think that's a serious matter. Running away is not something to like laugh at. It's very dangerous. And if you're young, like 16, that's not safe. And I just think it's really sad that that actually does happen in real life. And this book does a great job of depicting how that is in real life. Not all the time. I know there are some times that that's not true, but it does happen and it makes me really sad. So one of the police officers ends up pointing her in the direction of this girl named Destiny Cutler, who is Finley's best friend and a stoner girl. She's a problem girl and Finley has been getting into trouble with her. So they point her in her direction and Lucia goes and tries to meet with Destiny at the school. Destiny's not a big help. She's very rude and annoying, but she gives her the name of Finley's boyfriend. And yet again, Lucia is pointed in another direction to go find answers about Finley. So she goes and meets Brian, who is dating Finley. He's also 28 and he's dating a 16-year-old. So there's that thrown in there for you. There's some underage activity happening. And Lucy is obviously furious because it's her little sister. But he ends up telling her that in her last few days, weeks before she went missing, Finley had gotten into a scavenger hunt on the dark net. And she'd become kind of obsessed with it. And Lucia takes that and kind of runs with it. The scavenger hunt is called Mr. Stick's Labyrinth. And Mr. Stick's, I don't really know exactly what he is. He's supposed to be this demon, entity, god, if you will, supernatural thing that helps people when they're lost. He gives them what they desire. He makes them feel a purpose. He gives them what they're longing for, which, if you know anything about the supernatural, that sounds terrifying, and I would not do that. But it's a book, so of course, teenagers, you know. So Brian, Lucia, and Peter, who is a former high school student just like Lucia and Brian, they end up joining up together to enter the scavenger hunt. They get Destiny to get them the link to enter, and they start following the directions, which is kind of dumb, but I also get the thinking, if they can figure out what Finley was doing, then maybe they'll run into her or find clues or find, footprints if you will, footprints, and they'll be able to find out where she is or what's happened to her. So let's talk about the two girls. Lucia is, I don't know, she's kind of stuck up, but she gets better at the more middle-ish end of the book, but she is stuck up. She doesn't like her hometown. She doesn't want to be a part of her hometown anymore, and she has MS, and so she walks with a cane, and she, you know, it's kind of obvious that she has, you know, a disability, and I don't think she feels comfortable in that small town because everyone stares at her. So I think that is a lot of why she doesn't like her hometown. But she's not stuck up, but she just doesn't want to be there anymore. And she prefers living far away in Denver, where she works in the city. Finley, from what I've seen in the first chapter, she seems to be very lost, even if as a 16-year-old. I think that's why the Scavenger Hunt brought itself to her, or brought her to it, if you will. And I think she was just lost. She just seems like one of those teenagers that were lost and needed guidance, and Mr. Sticks was there for her. So those are the two main characters. There's also Brian and Peter, but I don't want to give too much away about Brian and Peter because they are big characters in the rest of the book. Let's get into some of my thoughts on the book. One thing I did find interesting in the book is they referenced creepypasta. And if you don't know what creepypasta is, it's this site. I think it's a site. I know you can find them on YouTube, and they tell scary stories, but they're mostly fake, or they're supposed to be fake. It's kind of like Reddit no sleep. You take it as truth even though it's fake. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And it references Mr. Sticks as being a sort of creepypasta urban legend type thing, which I thought was interesting because I do like creepypasta, and I thought that was kind of like a cool little aspect to it. I will say this book is not scary in the slightest. I didn't get anxious during it. I didn't get nervous during it. I didn't get twitchy or jumpy or anything, nothing. My face was just so blank, and I was just waiting to finish it. Honestly, it left me more confused than it did scared, if we're being honest, but not scary at all. One thing that really disappointed me, and I get that maybe this wasn't the direction the author wanted to go in, but the dark web, the dark net, didn't play a very big role in the book at all. And I get why, but it was just kind of frustrating because the back of the book makes it seem like there's going to be more playing with the dark net, the dark web, you know? And I was just kind of sad because the dark net, they're only on it for a handful of times, and nothing really happens, nothing goes down. It's just doing the Mr. Sticks labyrinth and stuff like that. So I was kind of disappointed because I wanted more dark net action. I wanted that to be more of a prominent figure, and it just wasn't, which to each their own, but that's what I was expecting and what I wanted. This is a very supernatural book, not very, but there are aspects of supernatural tendencies, and this is a supernatural twist, if you will. So if you don't like supernatural books, you probably wouldn't like this book, but if you do, then you might want to check it out. I think the ending was so sucky. I hated the ending. I haven't hated an ending this much in a really long time, and I really hated this ending. It really annoyed me. There was no conclusion. It was just done, and that frustrates me as a reader because I like to have a cut and dry ending most of the time, unless the cliffhanger ending is really good, but this just was not for me. So I was really, really disappointed and very unsatisfied with the ending. However, when I looked this up on Goodreads, it says that there's a number 1 by this name, like Mr. Stick's number 1. So I think the author might be turning this into a series, and if he does, I might like that a little bit better, because then I will have more of a satisfying ending, hopefully, if he continues it and gives me something to go with on here. So if this is going to be a series, I'll feel a little bit better about it. Hopefully, it did have a number 1 by its name, so I think that's what Goodreads does when it's going to become a series. So I'm pretty interested about that. We'll see how that goes, but since this came out in April of this year, I'm gonna have forever to wait for that. So I really liked the idea of this book. It just wasn't what I expected, and I was just slightly disappointed by the tone that it took and the route that it took. But I didn't think it was a bad book. It's not awful, it's just not what I wanted, so I was just slightly disappointed by it. And that's really all I have to say by this book. I feel bad. I don't like giving like bad book reviews, and I don't think I just gave a bad book review. I'm just sad. It wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a little bit more like dark web action, scary, spooky, like murderers and, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm very fascinated by the dark web, and I just thought that's what this was gonna be, and it wasn't. And I was just kind of like, okay. It was just a slightly boring thriller book, if you will. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this book. I am sorry this was a little sad, I guess. I don't know. I don't like being negative, but I want to give you guys my full opinion, and I don't want to tell you guys that a book's good when it's not. So please let me know if you have read this book. If you have, I'm going to be really surprised because apparently no one's read this book. But if you have, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be super interested to hear your thoughts. If you have any suggestions for horror, thriller, mystery books, I would be very much appreciated for some recommendations. And yeah, guys, that's all I have for you today. So I hope you guys like, subscribe, comment, and I hope I see you guys in my next video. Bye!